Hidden beneath the Turkish soil is Göbekli Tepe, a 12,000-year-old monument that makes Stonehenge look like a toddler's sandbox. Built by supposed primitive hunter-gatherers, this site shatters everything we thought we knew about the dawn of humanity. But here's the truth nobody's telling you. Göbekli Tepe is not the world's first civilization. And the reason? It's going to flip your timeline upside down. See, to claim the first civilization crown, you need more than ancient stones. You need sprawling cities packed with thousands, the invention of writing, powerful governments, social hierarchies, and economies fueled by massive agriculture. That explosive combo? It didn't hit the world until about 6,000 years ago, right in the mud brick heart of Mesopotamia, Sumer. Sumerians didn't just build cities, they invented writing, bureaucracy, and the world's first epic tales. They set the template for every civilization that followed. But the race was on. Ancient Egypt's pharaohs and pyramids rose just centuries later, while the mysterious Indus Valley civilization stunned the world with its planned cities and undeciphered script. So, why does Göbekli Tepe rewrite history, but not claim the civilization crown? How did Sumer leap ahead? And what secrets are Egypt and the Indus Valley still hiding? Buckle up. Myths are about to be shattered, timelines decoded, and the birth of human society revealed like never before. Let's dive deep into the real origins of civilization. Why Sumer is called the world's oldest civilization. In the vast, sun-scorched sands of modern-day Iraq lie the ghostly remnants of a lost world. It's a civilization so ancient, it predates the great pyramids of Egypt and the earliest philosophers of Greece. This is the story of a people who, for the first time in history, built cities, wrote down their thoughts, and began writing the first chapters of what it means to be human. This is the story of Sumer. But what exactly did they do to earn the title of the world's first civilization? What spark ignited in this land between two rivers that would set the course for all of humanity? To find the answer, we have to journey back 6,000 years to the very dawn of history to uncover the revolutionary ideas that truly define the birth of civilization as we know it. Our story begins where so many do, with geography. The stage for this grand human drama is a place the ancient Greeks called Mesopotamia, which means the land between the rivers. These two rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, are the lifeblood of this story. They start in the mountains of modern-day Turkey and flow south to the Persian Gulf, creating a crescent of improbable fertility in an otherwise harsh, dry landscape, the Fertile Crescent. But this land wasn't exactly a gentle paradise. The rivers were wild and unpredictable, and their floods could wipe out a year's worth of crops in a single devastating surge. Away from the riverbanks, the land was dry and hostile. This environment presented its inhabitants with a stark choice: figure it out or be wiped out. It was this constant battle against nature that pushed the earliest settlers here, known as the Ubaid people, to start mastering their world around 4500 BCE. They laid the groundwork, but it was the Sumerians who truly began to flourish during the Uruk period in the late 4th millennium BCE, who would write the epic. They took the challenges of this land, the scorching sun, the violent floods, and turned them into the very catalysts for building a civilization. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans were wanderers. But in Sumer, something profoundly different happened. We didn't just build bigger villages, we built the world's first cities. This wasn't just a change in scale, it was a complete reinvention of how people lived together. And the archetype of this new creation, what many historians consider the very first true city on Earth, was Uruk. At its peak around 3100 BCE, Uruk was unlike anything the world had ever seen. a sprawling metropolis that may have housed between 40,000 and 80,000 people. A massive defensive wall, 6 miles long, encircled the city, a clear statement of power, permanence, and community. While Sumerian tradition sometimes names the city of Eridu as the very first, Uruk is the best documented example of these massive early urban centers. What truly made Uruk a city was that for the first time, not everyone had to be a farmer. An agricultural surplus allowed for an explosion of new jobs. Suddenly, you had priests, craftsmen, merchants, soldiers, and government officials. An ancient clay tablet from Uruk lists professions as specific as stonecutters, weavers, and jewelers. This was the birth of a complex society, a web of interconnected roles that still defines city life today. At the heart of every Sumerian city, dominating the flat landscape, stood the ziggurat. These were colossal, stepped pyramids made of mud brick, with a temple on top that was considered the home of the city's patron god. The ziggurat wasn't just a church, it was the religious, economic, and administrative center of the city. Priests managed the city's vast storehouses of grain and goods from here, organizing the lifeblood of their society. Life revolved around the temple. It was the anchor of their new urban world. As cities like Uruk grew, their leaders faced a huge new problem. How do you keep track of everything? How do you manage tribute from thousands of people, record goods flowing in and out of the temple, and give out rations to an army of workers? Human memory wasn't going to cut it. The Sumerians needed a new technology for information itself. Their solution would change the world forever. They invented writing. The earliest known writing system, cuneiform, emerged in Sumer around 3400 BCE. And it didn't begin with poetry or grand histories, but with something far more practical: accounting. The first tablets are simple records. So many sheep, so many measures of barley. It started with simple pictures, but over centuries it evolved into something much more sophisticated. Scribes used a reed stylus to press wedge-shaped marks into wet clay, which gives the script its name, cuneiform, from the Latin word for wedge. The true genius of cuneiform was its leap from representing things to representing sounds. The symbols came to stand for syllables, which could be combined to represent any word or idea. This unlocked the full power of written language. Suddenly, people could record more than just trade. They could write down their laws, creating a system of justice that was consistent and lasting. They could chronicle the deeds of their kings, giving birth to history, and they could write down their myths and stories. It was through cuneiform that the world's first great work of literature was recorded, the Epic of Gilgamesh. It's a sprawling tale about a legendary king of Uruk and his quest for immortality. It explores timeless themes of friendship, loss, and what it means to be human, proving that as soon as the Sumerians could write, they started asking the same deep questions we still ask today. The ability to read and write was a powerful skill, and scribes who mastered it held positions of great respect, turning spoken words into a legacy that would survive for millennia. While writing might be their most famous achievement, the Sumerians were hardly a one-hit wonder. Their knack for invention was incredible, driven by the need to control their chaotic world. Many of their innovations are so fundamental, they still echo in our lives today. First and foremost was their mastery of water. To survive, they had to tame the Tigris and Euphrates. They pioneered large-scale irrigation, digging a complex network of canals to divert river water to dry fields, turning desert into farmland. This system was the engine of their civilization. It created huge food surpluses that fed their cities and, to make it even more efficient, they invented the cedar plow, a device that would till the soil and plant seeds at the same time. Just as transformative was the wheel. While evidence for the first wheels appears in both Mesopotamia and Europe around the same time, it was the Sumerians who, around 3500 BCE, pioneered its use in revolutionary ways. Its first application wasn't for transport, but for making pottery, allowing for the mass production of containers. Soon after, they adapted it for the first chariots and carts, changing both trade and warfare forever. The Sumerians were also brilliant mathematicians. They developed a base 60 counting system. It might seem odd to us, but its legacy is all around you. The reason we have 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, and 360 degrees in a circle is a direct inheritance from Sumer. This math was essential for building their massive ziggurats and surveying their land. They were also the world's first astronomers, mapping the stars and identifying the 5 planets you can see with the naked eye. Finally, they were masters of metallurgy. The Sumerians were among the first to move from stone to metal, mastering the fabrication of copper to create everything from tools and razors to weapons like spearheads and helmets, transforming their military capabilities. With bustling cities and new technologies, the Sumerians needed a way to keep everything organized. This led them to create the political and social structures that would become a blueprint for civilizations to come. Sumer wasn't a single unified empire. It was a collection of independent and often competing city-states like Uruk, Ur, and Lagash. Each city was its own kingdom with its own ruler, its own army, and its own patron god who was seen as the city's true owner. This led to frequent wars over land, water, and influence. In the earliest days, the government was a theocracy, ruled by the gods. The city's ruler was a priest-king who acted as the god's representative on earth. But as warfare became more common, a more secular role of the king, or Lugal, emerged. A powerful warrior who held ultimate authority. Sumerian society was a pyramid. At the top were the king and priests, who controlled most of the wealth. Below them were nobles and administrators. The largest group was the commoners, farmers, merchants, and artisans who could own land and run businesses. At the very bottom were slaves, typically prisoners of war or people who had fallen into debt. Crucially, the Sumerians understood that a society needs justice to function. They were the first to write down their laws. And long before the more famous Code of Hammurabi, there was the Code of Ur-Nammu, the oldest legal code ever discovered. It laid out specific punishments for crimes, establishing a foundation of civil law that would influence the entire ancient world. The Sumerians were the first to build a world defined by these complex systems of writing, technology, and law. But which of these achievements do you think was the most important? Was it the invention of writing that allowed history itself to exist? Or was it the mastery of irrigation that made the cities possible in the first place? So, why is Sumer called the world's oldest civilization? Because in the land between the rivers, all the essential ingredients came together for the first time. While other cultures had some of these elements, the Sumerians were the first to combine them into one fully integrated system. Cities, specialized labor, government, writing, and world-changing technology. Their legacy isn't just a list of historical firsts. It's woven into our modern life. Every time you check the clock, you're using their math. Every time you read a book, you're carrying on a tradition they began by etching stories onto clay. The very idea of a city, a diverse community living together under a system of laws, is a Sumerian concept. They gave us the original blueprint. They were the first to face the challenges of urban life, the first to build a complex state, and the first to record their triumphs and fears, leaving behind a profound legacy for every civilization that would follow. The second oldest civilization in the world. For centuries, the world has looked to the majesty of ancient Egypt as the very dawn of civilization. The pyramids, the pharaohs, the golden treasures, they seem to stand alone at the beginning of time. It's a powerful image, this idea of a solitary titan of culture that sprang fully formed from the desert sands. It's a story we all think we know. But what if it's a story that's missing some critical pages? What if the rise of this legendary civilization wasn't a solo performance, but more like a frantic competitive sprint? And what if, at the very moment the first Egyptians were harnessing the power of the Nile, another mighty civilization was already building cities, worshiping gods, and writing history between two unpredictable rivers? The truth is, the world's first great ancient powers didn't rise in a vacuum. It was a race. So, what if I told you that as the first Egyptians were building their kingdom on the predictable banks of the Nile, another great power was already rising in the chaotic lands of Mesopotamia? This wasn't a solo act. It was a sprint to create the future. This puts Egypt in a fascinating position. It wasn't the first, but it built a legacy that would echo for eternity. So how did Egypt, in a world with other emerging giants, forge its own unique identity and create something so powerful and enduring? Every great civilization is, first and foremost, a child of its environment. And to understand the profound differences between Sumer and Egypt, we have to start not with kings or gods, but with the very land that birthed them. Their stories were literally written in water, soil, and sun. First, imagine Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. This was Sumer. Here, life was a total gamble. The rivers were violent and capricious, prone to sudden catastrophic floods that could obliterate a year's crops overnight. Or they might shift their course entirely, leaving a once thriving city stranded in a desolate wasteland. The landscape itself was a flat, open plain, offering zero natural defenses against raiders or ambitious neighbors. This geography bred a specific worldview. You could call it a kind of cosmic pessimism. The Sumerians looked at the universe and saw chaos, a world governed by temperamental, easily angered gods who had to be constantly appeased. Their relationship with the divine was one of anxious negotiation. Their world was unpredictable, so their gods must be as well. Life was a constant struggle, and this deep-seated anxiety shaped every facet of their civilization. Now, let's travel southwest to the land of Egypt. Here, the story couldn't be more different. There was one god that truly mattered, the Nile River. But unlike the wrathful rivers of Sumer, the Nile was a benevolent, predictable force. Every single year, like clockwork, it would gently swell, blanketing its banks in a layer of rich black silt before receding. This flood wasn't a disaster, it was a promise. It was the divine calendar that dictated the rhythm of life, ensuring bountiful harvests. This predictability created a profoundly different psychology. The Egyptians looked at the universe and saw Ma'at, a fundamental order, a divine harmony that governed all of creation. Their world was stable, cyclical, and reliable. Life wasn't a struggle against chaos, but a celebration of that cosmic order. This sense of security was reinforced by geography. To the east and west were vast, impassable deserts. To the north, the Mediterranean Sea, and to the south, the cataracts of the Nile. Egypt was a natural fortress, sheltered from the turmoil of the outside world. This fundamental difference, a world of chaos versus a world of order, is the key. It created two entirely different blueprints for building a civilization. While the Sumerians were looking for ways to manage chaos, the Egyptians were building a society that reflected the divine harmony they saw all around them. As these two societies grew, they both ran into the same problem: the limits of human memory. How do you run a kingdom? How do you track trade, collect taxes, or pass down sacred knowledge? The answer, arrived at in both regions within the same general era, would change the world forever: the invention of writing. In Sumer, born from the practical need for record-keeping, cuneiform emerged first, with the earliest forms appearing around 3400 BCE. The name means wedge-shaped, which perfectly describes how scribes used a reed stylus to press marks into soft clay tablets. While it started with pictures, it evolved into a sophisticated system representing sounds, allowing them to record everything from laws to epic poems. The medium itself, humble clay, was a reflection of their environment. It was abundant and durable once baked, but also incredibly cumbersome. A library in Sumer was a warehouse of heavy, brittle tablets. A few centuries later, the Egyptians developed their own, radically different solution: hieroglyphics. While there's evidence that the idea of writing may have been sparked by contact with Mesopotamia, the system the Egyptians created was uniquely their own. Hieroglyphs were beautiful and complex, a vibrant mix of symbols representing objects and sounds. But unlike the utilitarian look of cuneiform, hieroglyphs were art. They were meant to be seen, carved into the stone of temples and tombs as a permanent, monumental declaration of power. For everyday use, they developed cursive scripts written on papyrus, a lightweight, portable material made from Nile reeds. This gave Egyptian administration a speed and efficiency clay tablets could never hope to match. A single scribe with a few papyrus scrolls could carry more information than a cartload of Sumerian tablets. So while Sumerians may have written first to manage the present, Egyptians perfected a version designed to be immortal. The political paths of Sumer and Egypt diverged as dramatically as their rivers. Their different environments led to two completely opposite models of a kingdom. Sumer was a land of city-states. Cities like Uruk, Ur, and Eridu grew as independent power centers, each with its own king and patron god. These city-states were in a near constant state of conflict, bickering over land, water, and influence. A Sumerian king was seen as a steward, the god's representative on earth, but he wasn't a god himself. His main job was to mediate between the people and the often angry deities. Powerful rulers might conquer the whole region for a time, but these empires were fragile. The default state of Sumer was fragmentation, a perfect reflection of their chaotic world. In Egypt, the opposite happened. The land wasn't destined for a collection of squabbling cities, but for a single unified kingdom. Around 3100 BCE, a king from the south, known to history as Narmer, completed the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt. This event was the single most important moment in Egyptian political history. It kicked off the first dynasty and established a centralized state that would last, with few interruptions, for 3,000 years. And the Egyptian king, the pharaoh, wasn't just a representative of the gods. He was a god. He was the living embodiment of the god Horus, and his divine status was the bedrock of the entire state. His job was to maintain Ma'at, that cosmic order, ensuring the harmony of the universe was reflected in the kingdom's stability. This belief, combined with Egypt's natural defenses, created incredible political stability. It allowed for long-term planning and the mobilization of resources on a scale unimaginable in Sumer. While Sumerian kings were mustering armies to fight their neighbors, Egyptian pharaohs were mustering a nation to build monuments to their own divinity, creating one of the world's first great unified states. Nowhere is this clash of worldviews more obvious than in their massive buildings. Both civilizations reached for the heavens, building structures that dominated their landscapes, but they were building them for completely different reasons. In the heart of every Sumerian city stood a ziggurat. These were immense, stepped pyramids made of mud brick, with a temple at the very top. A ziggurat was not a tomb. It was a man-made mountain, a stairway to heaven, meant to bridge the gap between the mortal world and the home of the gods. The temple at the summit was a house for the city's patron deity, a place where the god could descend and receive worship. The whole thing was an act of appeasement, an attempt to honor the powerful and unpredictable gods and convince them to smile on the city. The Egyptians built pyramids, and while they share a similar shape, their purpose was the polar opposite. A pyramid wasn't a temple for a god, it was a tomb for a king who was a god. But it was more than just a tomb. It was an engine of resurrection. It was a gateway to the afterlife, a launch pad designed to rocket the pharaoh's soul into the eternal realm of the gods. Built with massive blocks of limestone and granite and engineered with breathtaking precision, the pyramid was a statement of ultimate confidence. It wasn't built to appease the gods, but to join them.
This all stems from their views on the afterlife. For the Sumerians, the afterlife was a grim, dreadful place, a dark, shadowy underworld where spirits wandered aimlessly, eating dust. There was no judgment, no reward, just a bleak, eternal nothingness for everyone. Their religion was focused on this world, on making life bearable before the gloomy end. The Egyptians, however, had one of history's most hopeful visions of immortality. They believed death was just a doorway to an eternal paradise, a perfect version of life on the Nile. But it wasn't a given. It required passing a final judgment. This is why they perfected mummification and built such elaborate tombs, filling them with everything the deceased would need for eternity: food, furniture, and sacred texts to navigate the journey. A Sumerian ziggurat was a house for a god on Earth. An Egyptian pyramid was a portal for a human god to reach the heavens. These two foundational civilizations laid the groundwork of our world in profoundly different ways. Their legacies are a testament to the power of geography and belief in shaping human history. What aspect of their parallel journey do you find most fascinating? Was it their competing views of the gods, their different approaches to government, or the stark contrast between the pyramid and the ziggurat? So how did Egypt, in a sprint against the world's first great urban civilization, forge its own path? It didn't win by being faster. It won by running in a completely different direction. While Sumer was developing in the chaotic cradle of Mesopotamia, Egypt was nurtured by the stable embrace of the Nile. This single geographical reality created two distinct psychologies. The Sumerian worldview, steeped in a fear of unpredictable gods, led to a fragmented land of warring city-states. Their great innovations, from cuneiform to the ziggurat, were practical tools designed to manage the chaos. Egypt, blessed with order and abundance, developed a worldview of cosmic harmony, or Ma'at. This gave them the divine pharaoh, a unifying force who commanded absolute power, and an optimistic faith in a glorious but earned afterlife. Their innovations, from hieroglyphs to the pyramids, were expressions of confidence and a quest for eternity. In the end, it was never a simple two-way race. Other great cultures were also rising, from the cities of the Indus Valley to the mysterious Caral soup civilization in Peru. Early Egypt absorbed key influences from Mesopotamia, in art, architecture, and maybe even the spark of writing itself. The civilization that grew along the Nile was not a copy, but a powerful and enduring alternative, a testament to the idea that there has never been just one way to build the future. The third oldest civilization on Earth, history forgot. In the vast silent landscapes of what is now Pakistan and northwest India lie the remains of a world that feels almost impossible. A world that for thousands of years was simply erased from human memory, a ghost on the pages of history. This wasn't just some minor settlement or a forgotten tribe. This was one of the three great earliest civilizations of humankind, a contemporary to the mighty empires of Egypt and Mesopotamia. In fact, it was the most widespread of them all. They built cities of breathtaking complexity, with technologies that wouldn't be seen again for millennia. They were a powerhouse of the ancient world, and then they were gone. This is the story of the Indus Valley Civilization, one of the first great chapters in the story of humanity and one of its greatest mysteries. For most of recorded history, the story of ancient India was thought to begin much, much later, with the arrival of Aryan tribes and the writing of the sacred Vedas. The very idea that a massive urban civilization could have come before them wasn't just unknown, it was unthinkable. The only clues were whispers, strange artifacts that just didn't fit the official timeline. In the 1870s, the archaeologist Alexander Cunningham stumbled upon a curious stone seal at a site called Harappa. It was carved with the depiction of a bull and a script he'd never seen before. He described the characters as quite unknown to me. For decades, these seals were little more than a historical curiosity, an unsolvable riddle. The true scale of what lay buried beneath the earth remained a secret. That secret was finally blown wide open in the 1920s. Under the leadership of Sir John Marshall, the Archaeological Survey of India began full-scale excavations at Harappa and another massive mound of ruins called Mohenjo-Daro, the Mound of the Dead. What they unearthed wasn't just a simple town, it was a full-blown city, built with a level of precision and planning that was staggering. And it wasn't just one city. Soon another emerged, and then another. The discovery was revolutionary. It pushed back the timeline of urban life in South Asia by thousands of years, revealing a civilization that flourished in its mature form from around 2600 to 1900 BCE. This wasn't just a local culture. It was a civilization spanning a vast area, from modern-day Afghanistan through Pakistan and into northwestern India. In terms of sheer geographic size, it dwarfed both ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia combined. Over 1,000 settlements have now been found, scattered across the basin of the mighty Indus River and the once perennial Ghaggar-Hakra river system. A grand narrative of world history had to be rewritten. There were no longer two cradles of civilization in the old world, but three. But who were these people? Where did they come from? To answer that, we have to travel even further back to a site called Marigar. Located in the foothills of modern-day Pakistan, Marigar gives us a glimpse of the dawn of the Neolithic age in South Asia, with evidence of farming and herding dating back as far as 7000 BCE. For thousands of years, the people here developed pottery, domesticated wheat, barley, and cattle, and slowly built the cultural and technological toolkit that would give rise to the giants of the Indus. Marigar was the seed from which one of history's greatest and most mysterious civilizations would grow. What makes the Indus Valley Civilization, or the Harappan civilization as it's also known, so incredible isn't just its age, but its sheer sophistication. This was not a world of mud huts and simple tools. This was a society that had mastered the art of urban living 5 millennia ago. Let's start with their cities. The two largest, Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, were marvels of engineering, each likely home to tens of thousands of people. These weren't chaotic sprawls that grew over time, they were planned, laid out on a precise grid system, with wide main streets and smaller intersecting lanes. They're some of the world's earliest examples of city planning. Buildings were constructed from standardized fire-baked bricks, a testament to a centralized system of production and measurement. Unlike the mud bricks common in Mesopotamia, these baked bricks were durable and water-resistant, essential for building in a region of monsoons and river floods. But what lay beneath the streets is what's truly mind-blowing: the world's first known urban sanitation systems. Many houses, even modest ones, had their own private wells and bathrooms. From these bathing areas, wastewater flowed into covered drains that ran along the main streets. These drains were masterpieces of hydraulic engineering, precisely sloped and connected to larger sewer mains that carried waste safely out of the city. Some homes even had what appeared to be the world's earliest flush toilet systems, where a jar of water could be used to send waste through a clay pipe into the street drain. The drains even had inspection holes with removable slabs for cleaning. This level of public health and engineering wouldn't be matched in many parts of the world for another 4,000 years. At the heart of Mohenjo-Daro lies a structure known as the Great Bath. It's a massive public water tank, 12 meters long, 7 meters wide, and sealed with natural tar to be perfectly waterproof. Surrounded by a colonnade and small rooms, it was likely used for public rituals, a shared space that speaks to a common civic or religious identity. Nearby, enormous structures identified as granaries suggest a complex system for storing and distributing agricultural surplus, the very engine of a thriving urban society. So who organized all this? This is where the mystery deepens. In Egypt, we find towering pyramids and lavish tombs for god-kings. In Mesopotamia, we have palaces adorned with reliefs of powerful rulers. In the Indus Valley, we find none of that. There are no obvious palaces, no royal graves filled with treasure, no giant statues of kings. The cities are remarkably uniform. Houses, while they vary in size, share a similar design, suggesting a surprisingly egalitarian society. This sense of order extended to their economy. The Harappans developed an astonishingly precise system of standardized weights and measures. Archaeologists have found thousands of cubical weights made from chert stone in a series of graduated sizes based on a consistent ratio. This standardization was the bedrock of their vast trade network. It meant a merchant in Harappa could be confident that a measure of grain or a block of copper would be the same in Mohenjo-Daro, hundreds of kilometers away. And their trade wasn't just local, it was global. Indus seals, beads, and pottery have been found as far away as Mesopotamia in the great Sumerian cities of Ur and Kish. Mesopotamian texts from around 2350 BCE speak of trading with a distant land called Meluha, which scholars are almost certain was the Indus Valley. They mention imports of timber, ivory, and precious stones like carnelian. In fact, beautifully crafted carnelian beads, made with a technique unique to the Indus region, were a prized luxury item in Mesopotamia, even found in the royal graves at Ur. To make all this trade happen, the Harappans were master seafarers. Clay models show both riverboats and more robust ocean-going ships with masts for sails. A massive brick-lined basin discovered at the coastal city of Lothal is believed by many to be a tidal dockyard, a stunning testament to their maritime skill. It's even possible that Indus artisans and their families lived abroad. Some evidence suggests that Harappan women may have traveled as far as Susa in ancient Mesopotamia. So we have this picture of a civilization that was incredibly organized, technologically advanced, and commercially powerful. They had a shared culture that spanned a vast territory, unified by common planning, weights, and, most tantalizingly, writing. Yet the very nature of their power structure remains invisible. How could a society of possibly up to 5 million people function with such coordination, apparently without the kings, priests, and armies that defined their contemporaries? It's a question that leads us to the heart of the Indus enigma. Every object the Harappans left behind seems to whisper a story. Their intricate beadwork tells of skilled artisans. Their standardized bricks tell of organized governance. Their sprawling cities tell of engineering genius. But there is one story they are desperately trying to tell us that we cannot hear. It's written on thousands of small stone seals, pottery shards, and copper tablets. It is the Indus script, and it is completely, utterly undeciphered. For a century, the world's best minds have tried to crack this code. The script consists of over 400 distinct symbols, a mix of what look like pictograms and abstract shapes. The inscriptions are frustratingly short, usually just 4 or 5 characters long, making it incredibly difficult to find patterns. There is no Indus Rosetta Stone, no bilingual text to provide a key. Is the script where symbols represent both words and sounds, like Mesopotamian cuneiform? Or is it not a language at all, but a complex system of symbols for families, gods, or trade guilds? Scholars are divided. The challenge is so great that in early 2025, the Chief Minister of the Indian state of Tamil Nadu announced a $1 million prize for anyone who finally cracks it. And to pool the world's expertise, the Archaeological Survey of India is hosting a major international conference in August 2025, bringing global experts together in a renewed push to solve the puzzle. Unlocking this script wouldn't just give us names and dates, it would give a voice to this silent civilization, revealing their beliefs, their laws, their stories, their very identity. Without their words, we are left to confront the final and greatest mystery. After flourishing for some 700 years, this colossal civilization began to decline around 1900 BCE. The great cities started to decay. The meticulous urban planning broke down. Shoddy houses made of old, recycled bricks began to encroach on the once grand streets. The Great Bath and the granaries fell into disuse. Trade with Mesopotamia dried up. The script vanished. The unity that defined the civilization fractured. Eventually, the cities were abandoned, left to be buried by the dust of time. How did it happen? How does a civilization of millions just fade away? For a long time, the leading theory was a violent invasion by so-called Aryan tribes, with one archaeologist pointing to skeletons found scattered in the streets of Mohenjo-Daro as evidence of a final massacre. But today, that theory has been largely discredited by most scholars. There's just not widespread evidence of a war that could topple an entire civilization. Instead, the focus has shifted to the environment. The Harappans were a Bronze Age civilization, but their lifeblood was water. Their society was built on the floodplains of the Indus and the now seasonal Ghaggar Hakra River. Evidence suggests that around the time of the decline, the climate began to change. The monsoons, which fed the rivers, may have become weaker and more erratic. A long-term drought would have crippled their agriculture, the engine of their entire economy. The very rivers that gave them life may have betrayed them. The Ghaggar Hakra, once a mighty river that supported hundreds of settlements, began to dry up as its water sources were diverted to other river systems. For the cities that relied on it, this would have been a death sentence. At the same time, in other areas like Mohenjo-Daro, there is evidence of catastrophic city-drowning floods, possibly caused by tectonic activity. It was likely a slow, agonizing decline, a perfect storm of pressures. A drying climate, shifting rivers, devastating floods, and the overexploitation of resources would have created a cascade of crises. Crop failures would lead to famine. The collapse of agriculture would undermine the economic power of the cities. With their core function gone, the vast, interconnected system would unravel. People likely just walked away, migrating in smaller groups towards the more fertile Ganges basin in the east, their complex urban culture dissolving back into a simpler, village-based life. The great cities weren't destroyed in a blaze of glory. They were slowly abandoned, their streets falling silent as their inhabitants sought survival elsewhere. The Indus Valley civilization is a profound lesson in how fragile even the most advanced societies can be. It reminds us that history isn't just a story of what we know, but a vast ocean of what we've lost. What other forgotten worlds lie buried, waiting to be rediscovered? If you were captivated by this journey into our forgotten past, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more explorations of lost worlds. And let us know in the comments, what theory for their decline do you find most compelling? From its stunning rediscovery to the breathtaking sophistication of its cities, and the enduring mystery of its writing, the Indus Valley civilization changes our understanding of the ancient world. It was a civilization of profound paradoxes, urban and orderly without obvious kings, technologically advanced yet spiritually enigmatic, vast in its reach but silent in its voice. The ghosts of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro linger, their grid-like streets and silent baths, a testament to a world that achieved a unique and stable form of complex society. They are a stark reminder that what we call history is merely the surviving fraction of the past. For now, the Indus Valley remains history's greatest lost chapter, a civilization that, for a brilliant moment, mastered the art of living before being reclaimed by the earth.